Welcome back. And thanks for joining us here at Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Carl Lahara. We are talking politics now, and let's take a look over there at the White House in Washington, D.C. We're just 44 days away from the November election, and there are plenty of political headlines to get into. The latest today comes from former President Donald Trump. In an interview that aired today, he told TV host Sharyl Attkisson that he will likely not run again in 2028 if he loses to Kamala Harris in November, something that is echoed here in this tweet from the New York Post. Now, Trump will turn 82 in the year 2028, a year older than President Biden is now. Here to talk more politics with us is a national political reporter with Bloomberg, Stephanie Lai. Stephanie, good to see you on this Sunday. Now, it may not come as a surprise that Trump said he won't run in 2028 because this is, well, his first time running for president. But were you surprised that he actually came out and said that out loud?
I wasn't what I expected out of this Sunday morning, certainly, but I don't think what he's saying is all that surprising. As you know, he's run for office now 3 times, and this last election cycle has brought forth 2 assassination attempts. And as you noted earlier, he'll be 82 by the time that 2028 rolls around. And so, for someone in his position, it just doesn't seem to quite make a lot of sense. And I think what he's sort of alluding to in that statement is that we have to go out and vote. And he's telling his supporters, he's rallying his supporters to send him back into the White House this time around because he doesn't necessarily know if he'll want to run again in 2028.
If anything, it could also come off as a strategy to kind of, light the fire under some people that if they do want him back in the White House, they're going to have to go out and vote in this particular election. I want to talk about another headline, though, that did come out, and this is the topic of debates. So Harris said that she would participate in a CNN presidential debate on October 23rd. Trump says he's not going to be a part of that. And I actually want to play some sound from a rally that he held yesterday in which he speaks a little bit on that. So I want to play this for you guys, and then, Stephanie, I'll have you comment on the back end.
Have seen what's happening to their campaign, and it's not going well for them. And they would like, just announced a little while ago as I was coming off the plane, they would like to do another debate. Although, good entertainment value. A lot of people say, oh, do it, it's great entertainment. I've already done 2. One with Crooked Joe Biden at CNN, and the other one with Kamala on ABC. CNN was very fair, I thought. Joe was driven out of the race. It was a coup, by the way, but he was driven out of the race. And they've been widely criticized by the radical left lunatics for all of the fairness. They were very fair. In other words, they won't be fair again because they took a lot of abuse from the radical left. ABC was 3-on-1, but I was given credit for having done a very, very good job. I appreciate that. We did a great job. It was 3-on-1. The problem with another debate is that it's just too late. Voting has already started. She's had her chance to do it with Fox. Fox invited us on, and I waited, and they turned it down. But now she wants to do a debate right before the election with CNN because she's losing badly.
Okay, so a couple of things that I would like you, Stephanie, to talk about a little bit here. Is Trump right? Is October 23rd just too late to have a presidential debate?
I mean, that definitely is a point that a lot of people have been considering, especially folks on either campaigns. October 23rd is just, less than 2 weeks away from Election Day. And that, I guess, there is a lot of risk involved in doing a debate that late. It could change the momentum. And for a race like this that has been built off of what the vibe is in the moment, it could, drastically change how voters feel in going into November 5th. And as Trump notes, this election has technically already started. A lot of states have already opened up options for early voting. And he even conducted 2 tele-rallies just this evening for voters in Virginia and Minnesota, telling them to get out to vote, to go early. And so doing something this late, it might not necessarily play in his favor. And at the same time, for the Trump campaign, their strategy has been to get Kamala Harris to stop talking on those prepared remarks, right? We saw her very prepared for the first debate, and that doesn't necessarily bode well for them. And instead, they're asking and they're sort of pushing for reporters and for people to interview her on the spot to get those in the moment responses that they're hoping, show her not in the uh, as prepared light as she normally does come off as.
I want to, before we look ahead to the VP debate that is going to happen within the next few days, kind of ask one more question about presidential debates. I know that October 23rd, it is kind of late in the game there. But before yesterday, Trump had said that if he got in the right mood, he would be open to another presidential debate. But should we just come to the realization of the fact that we probably won't see that again in this election cycle between Trump and Harris?
It is really hard to say. And even getting the first debate to happen seemed to be one of those things that really came together in the last minute because we saw them continually debating the terms of the debate up until literally the last minute. We saw the campaigns going back and forth over whether or not we should allow mics to be open or on while the other candidate is speaking. It just doesn't seem like there was a lot of agreement on how they would go about this. And so it seems like trying to get a second debate between the two of them will only have more complications. So to your point, it doesn't seem very likely that'll happen. But, we do know that these candidates can sometimes be known to surprise us and we can never, completely discount a possibility.
Let's go back to something you said within your last answer, which is that Trump continues to push Harris and her campaign to just sit down for more of those one-on-one interviews. Now, so far, we've only had one with VP Harris, and she was alongside her running mate, Tim Walz. That was the CNN interview. Do you think that that's going to continue to be her strategy going forward? Are we going to see some more personal interviews with Harris ahead of this, especially now, given the fact that we probably won't see another debate between Trump and Harris?
I do think you're right on that. And in fact, we've seen Harris do more events or more interviews in the last couple of weeks. She sat down with Oprah, she sat down with the with NABJ reporters, and also did a Wired interview. And so I think what they've been looking for these moments where she can really let her personality shine, to show her humor and this perception of joy. I don't necessarily know if there are more interviews lined up with national outlets, with like these major TV outlets, but time will tell.
Okay, Stephanie, let's talk some of these latest poll numbers. I want to bring one up here. This was just conducted by NBC News. It says Harris tops Trump by 5 points. So you see Kamala Harris at 49%, Trump at 44%. What does this tell us about the state of the race right now, and how much could this change? And why has it kind of been this way given the last few weeks and what we have seen?
Well, certainly we've seen the enthusiasm behind Vice President Harris carry on for many more weeks than some political operatives originally thought would be the case. It does seem like this race has become a lot more competitive. And now we see the Trump campaign on the defensive in states like North Carolina, where it was supposed to be more of an easy win. And I do think that the polling at this point in the race might not be reflective of what we see happen on November 5th. Of course, there's so much more that can happen in the next 44 days, as we've seen the case of the last 3 months. Things keep changing constantly. And it really does feel like this race is one in which these individual moments really do change the wind or change the sails. And so I think it is too soon to say, whether this is a good sign for Harris or a bad sign for Trump. But obviously, the polling numbers have been changing quite significantly throughout this entire cycle.
Let's talk about these individual wins and these key moments that we are going to see within the next few weeks and that could change the state of the race. So next week, we are going to see the vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. What do you think that's what's going to come out of that? Actually, more specifically, do you think that depending on how either of those candidates do within that debate, it'll kind of change the state of what voters are thinking heading into November?
I mean, it is hard to say because these, Walz and Vance are both lesser known politicians than, say, Harris and Trump. It is still very helpful to be able to showcase your running mate as being very competent, fast on their feet, able to address the policy issues that Americans want to know. But I do think that this debate is more so their opportunity to introduce themselves on the national stage. And so I don't know if this will definitely impact the race. If something very drastic comes out of it, then perhaps it could. But more likely than not, it will definitely be the moment for these campaigns to just, introduce themselves to the American voters.
Stephanie, I'm also curious to know, as someone that really focuses on political reporting there for Bloomberg, and the fact that we're probably not going to see another Trump Harris debate, what are you most looking forward to seeing between JD Vance and Tim Walz this next week?
Certainly. I do think one very interesting point is to hear where they land on a lot of these economic issues, because this is an election about the economy, about immigration and safety. And I think a lot of American voters want to know, where do these two candidates stand? We've seen moments in which Senator Vance tends to differ from President Trump on certain policy views. And so it would be interesting to hear them sort of lay it out. Obviously they do answer to their top of the ticket, which is, either Harris or Trump. But to hear them, really get a better understanding of where they stand on some of these issues could be very influential for many Americans who are looking at them as, the second in command. If something happens to the president, they're the ones who jump into the fire and, run the country.
Case in point, being a vice president really does come with some major responsibilities, as we saw Biden dropping out. And now Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, is just one of the many twists that we've seen in this latest election. One more question for you, Stephanie, talking a little bit about fundraising efforts. We haven't spoken on them too much, but what have you seen, and what do these separate fundraising efforts kind of show when it comes to the momentum behind each of these candidates?
Certainly. Well, we've seen the Harris campaign really ramp up their operations. And of course, this has to rely on surrogates because Vice President Harris can't necessarily be at all these events. But a New York City fundraiser just today raised, I believe it was 27 million from what Bloomberg reported. And just seeing the amount of money that Democrats are pulling in really does show a sign of enthusiasm behind Harris and the ticket, something that we didn't necessarily see behind President Biden when he was running. The Trump campaign is also bringing in significant amounts of money in the millions, but not necessarily as much as the Harris campaign. But what's important to note is that the Trump campaign is a much leaner operation, and they're relying on super PACs and outside organizations to do some of that groundwork that traditionally the RNC would do. So it's not that they necessarily need that cash flow coming in.
Stephanie Lai, a political reporter there with Bloomberg, covering everything national politics. Still 44 days away from this election, so I'm sure we're going to see a lot more headlines. And of course, we'll be checking in with you throughout.